evening, everyone. We're going to get started. I just want to take a second to thank you all for coming out this evening. It would have been nice if it was 70 degrees and we could have sat by the pool, the beautiful pool, but we're so happy to be all together. We had tried to plan this Parlor meeting, Tony and I, 2 years ago in March, and literally a week before the world shut down, we had to cancel. We decided to cancel, and then the world shut down, and it turned out it was the right decision. So here we are 2 years later. Before we get started, Tony, if I could ask you to come up, I have just presenting you with this, a little gift for your opening up your beautiful home. And I'll tell you what it is. It's a Michael Aram honey boat, or honey, yeah. So it's really pretty. We hope it brings you and your family sweetness in the years to come.
That's nice.
And
Thank you.
you know, we're all about tradition and hoping you start some family traditions in this beautiful home with your beautiful family. So they say if you have one more sec, okay? So talking about tradition, Tony has followed in her mother Eva's footsteps. Eva, there you are. Mother's footstep. Tony is a life member of Hadassah, and Eva is a life member of Hadassah. And not only that, but Eva, can you just stand up and give a wave, because people back there. Eva has been president of the Migdal chapter of Hadassah for, what, 20 years now? Almost 20 years at North Shore Towers. So tradition is beautiful in your family. Every female, I think, in your family is a member of Hadassah. So continue the tradition, it's beautiful. Eva is a child of Holocaust survivors. Her mother, Tony's grandma, held a PhD in physics and was an ardent Zionist and supporter of Hadassah. This is where the tradition started, and thankfully it continues to today. Okay, you can sit down. Thank you, Tony. Let's give Tony a round of applause. In 1912, Henrietta Zold founded Hadassah, one of the first women-led organizations shattering a glass ceiling and transforming healthcare in Israel. More than 110 years later, Hadassah leads the world in stem cell and immunotherapy research, which holds the promise to treat and cure numerous devastating diseases which affect over 100 million Americans. While stem cell research is heavily regulated in the United States and other countries, it was well underway in Israel. We got a 10-year head start internationally, so that is why we are just on the forefront. Israel is a startup nation, and Hadassah is at the forefront of this movement. Hadassah physicians and researchers are game changers in medical innovation, and they share the research throughout the world. It is because of donors like us sitting here that Hadassah is able to continue its medical research and maintain their position in the forefront of innovation. This tradition of tzedakah was passed down by our grandparents and our parents, and now it is our job to pass it to our children, l'dor v'dor, from generation to generation. So by you being here, you are doing it, whether you realize it or not, so thank you. This evening's event serves as our kickoff for our 16th annual walkathon for stem cell research. This year, we're coming together as one at the Nassau County Museum of Art in Roslyn. And then that evening, there'll be a Zoom celebration for those of you who can't make it out during the day, or if you make it out during the day and you want to party with us at night on Zoom. We have amazing star Ben Rappaport, who will be our MC, and lots of fun things on that Zoom that you'll see. You'll all get more information on that. So enough about me. Now I would like to introduce Hadassah Nassau President Rachel Rosen, and she's going to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Okay, since the theme is tradition, some of you might know that it's a tradition in Hadassah Nassau for the president to stand up and say, "Hi." They don't all say Rachel Rosen, but I'm going to say that. I'm Rachel Rosen, the very proud president of Hadassah Nassau, and that is true. And seeing a crowd like this truly does make me proud. Before I get to our honorees, I really want to thank Brenda, Roz Meyerson and Carol and their amazing committees for putting this together and the walk. I want to give a shout out to Lara Werwa, our managing director, and to Felicia Solomon, our major gifts officer, because we all work together as a team to make things like this happen. Additionally, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, for making Hadassah and our world-renowned stem cell research a priority in your lives. I'm truly honored to present this year's honorees. And I'm beginning with the Ellen Domnich Inaugural Leadership Award. Where's Ellen? I know she's here. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm looking right over. So, Ellen, stand up, take a bow. You deserve it. Ellen created the stem cell, the Walkathon stem cell 16 years ago. So we created this award to honor Ellen's leadership and to encourage the next generation of leaders. That is tradition. Susan Falco, come on, stand up. She is the recipient of the Ellen Domnich Leadership Award. Susan, thank you for your, turn around so everyone can see you. Thank you for your involvement in Hadassah. We know it's not easy to juggle 4 active children while being on the school board in the Syosset School District. And you know what they say, give a busy woman a job and you know it'll get done. And just so you know, shout out to Shaloma, she's from my own chapter. And also in tradition, Susan follows in the footsteps of her mom, Nancy Pearlstein, and her mother-in-law, Lynn Falco and Michael are here. And Ethan, it's nice to meet you because, as I said, Ethans are close to my heart. I have one of my own. So Lynn and Michael, why don't you stand up and take a bow, introduce yourself to everyone. Susan, as an active member of the Shaloma chapter, you lead by example, and it's going to be our pleasure to give this award to you. So thank you. Sandy's also right in front of me. All right, Sandy, stand up. Sandy's the recipient of our Walk for a Cure award. Sandy, and she has the Rosen thing going for her. Sandy has been involved in Hadassah for over 50 years. How's that for tradition? She's passionate about Hadassah, and while she's held many volunteer positions, she's widely regarded as one of Hadassah Nassau's top fundraisers. That's her passion. We thank you for creating the dinner journal that you once chaired for Great Neck at your dinner dance. And in addition, you've been a mentor to many women who followed in your footsteps, and we are grateful. Sandy tells the story of how much time she spent working on Hadassah when she was raising 3 sons. And she remembers the days when the kids remember the days their mother was on the phone and had to listen to her conversations. When Sandy was on the phone constantly talking about Hadassah, her son said, "Mom, do we have to work for Hadassah when we get older?" Her 3 sons don't work for Hadassah, but they are supporters. Well, that's the but, I didn't get that. But they do support us, and in supporting us, they're supporting their mom. Thank you, Sandy, for all you have done and continue to do for Hadassah. And thank you for teaching your family to continue in that tradition. So, another award truly deserving. Thank you. Okay.
Saying that I've made more friends being part of Hadassah than I did any place else.
So Lynn and Arnie Gordon couldn't be here tonight, but they are the recipients of the Step to Hope Award. Aside from being my executive vice president and dear friend, Lynn and Arnie are proud Zionists and do much good work in support of Israel. By supporting Hadassah, they feel that's supporting Israel. And we could not agree more, and we are thankful for their involvement and their generosity. So let's have a round of applause for all of our incredible honorees. And now I'm going to introduce Stewart and Maggie Greenberg from Aventura, Florida. Stewart and his wife Maggie are creating their own traditions by spreading the word of the good deeds about Hadassah and sharing your personal story of recovery at Hadassah Hospital. Stewart credits Hadassah with saving his life. The Greenberg's goal now is to share the information around the United States, and from that, they traveled to Florida to come here to talk to us tonight about their journey. The Talmud says, if you save one life, it's as if you save the whole world. Since no one can tell your story as well as you couldn't do a better intro, I want to call you up to tell your own story, because it's fabulous. Thank you so much for being here. You know I only do this, but thank you so much.
A few hours ago in Israel, the sirens went off. And they went off because today in Israel is Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day. 10 years ago, Maggie and I heard those sirens in Jerusalem. We were there 3 weeks after I was given the most devastating diagnosis you could receive. When the doctors looked at me and said, "We're sorry, you have stage 4 metastatic melanoma in your stomach." And within 10 days, Maggie and I saw 3 of the top specialists in the United States at NIH and at Duke and down at Mount Sinai. And everyone said, there's no treatment, we're sorry, go home, make your final arrangements, you've got a few months. And what we decided to do was go on a trip to Israel with the 740 other 3 people from Miami who will go on this mission to go on our last vacation. So that night, we heard the sirens, and the next morning, we heard the sirens, and then we had a visit that happened because someone who heard my story in Miami, who was an Hadassah member, called me 2 days before we left for Israel and said, "You know, I'm a keeper of the gate. I've been giving money to Hadassah forever. Would you mind if I called to see if there was somebody at the hospital that could help you?" And I said, "Look, my life's an open book. Here's my cell number." And we went off to Israel. On our 3rd day, the phone rang. This woman was excited. She said, "Stewart, I got you an appointment for tomorrow with the head of immunotherapy and melanoma at Hadassah Hospital, Dr. Michal Lotem, at 12:45. Can you go?" I said, "We'll go." Maggie and I didn't Google her. We didn't look her up. That morning we were in Yad Vashem. Sirens went off again. And we had a hard time finding a taxi, but we found a taxi to take us to Hadassah. And Maggie will tell you a little bit about how the next hour and a half allowed me to be here today. Because this doctor stuck out her hand and said, "Shalom, I'm Michal." And she told us at that point, 10 years ago exactly now, that for the prior 10 years or 12 years, she had created a vaccine, an adaptive cell therapy vaccine, where the philosophy was every tumor has a few healthy cells that survive in that tumor for a short period of time till they get extinguished, till they lose their ability to survive because of the cancer cells. So her theory, and she was trained at Stanford and at NIH, was that if you extract this healthy cell and you multiply it by billions, and you treat it and you radiate it, and you inject it back into the body, it's going to cause a civil war in your body. It's going to seek out and destroy the cancer cells. It doesn't destroy the good cells, the healthy cells. It doesn't destroy the tissues. It doesn't destroy the organs. And she gave us hope that nobody had given us. And we looked at each other. We didn't have a medical record, but I knew my medical history. And we sat and we talked. And I said, "Can I be your patient?" And she said, "Absolutely. Go home, have your tumor removed in the States, be with your family. Come back here as soon as you can, and I'm going to start to treat you." For those of you that know the Jewish calendar, you know that Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day in Israel, is not like Memorial Day here. It's a very solemn day. There's no shopping to be done. There aren't any picnics. The only thing on television is the story and pictures of soldiers and people who have fallen defending Israel. But that day turns into Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut. So you go from sorrow to happiness. And that night, when we and the rest of our group sang Hatikva, the hope, it was the most emotional time of our lives, because here I was, 57 years old, a Jewish boy from Flushing, who had been to Israel, but never thought that an Israeli doctor had the opportunity to save my life. We were fortunate in that it was Beshet that we just happened to have scheduled his trip, decided to go on it against our family's wishes, had some lady from Hadassah make a phone call, and everything was just meant to be. And I'm here today 10 years later because of that treatment. So Maggie and I felt a need to give back. And she'll tell you how I was not myself for a very long time. I still didn't believe it. I bought one pair of underwear at a time. I bought a pair of socks at a time. One razor blade at a time, because I didn't think I was going to survive. And after a few years, we realized that we needed to do more. And Michal's lab was from the 1960s. And we said, what do you need? She said, well, I can use a modern lab with modern equipment and money to pay for researchers, because I want to get the brightest people in the world to come here. So we started a campaign, and I'm proud to say that she's got her new lab. But it's a continuing struggle, because we've got to get the researchers, we've got to get the scientists. And in Hadassah, the interesting thing is they take it from the bench to the bed. In other words, they do the research in a lab, and the doctors walk into the patient's room in the hospital, and they actually use the science that they've been working on, and they treat the patient with it. Unlike a research institute, which does the research, sends it out, and somebody else administers it. That's why Hadassah is so successful. So then we started to talk at meetings like this. And I have to tell you a story, because you guys were talking about tradition. Before a meeting like this, 3 people walked in, 2 gentlemen and a lady. And the guy came over to me and said, you know, I have no idea why I'm here, other than my mother was a member of Hadassah for 50 years. She passed away, and I felt I should be here to honor her. He says, well, why are you here? And we were speaking that night, and I told him my story very briefly, my elevator pitch, as somebody calls it. And he turned white. And he said, I was just diagnosed with stage 3 metastatic melanoma 3 days ago. He said, I was up in Sloan Kettering. They have nothing for me. Well, today, 7 years later, he's alive. He's gone to Israel. He's been treated. So each and every one of you, not only is an ambassador for Hadassah, but by being here tonight, you have the ability to save someone's life and to make a difference to someone's life, because now you know a little bit about what Hadassah does. When my grandmother used to go to a Hadassah meeting, I thought it was a luncheon and cards and that was it. I had no clue. But it's much more than that. It's so much more. It gives the world so very much. And when Maggie and we get phone calls almost every week. And there are young women right now, 2 of whom have terminal diagnoses for breast cancer that Hadassah is trying to help. So you all make it possible. You make it extremely possible. The work that's being done at Hadassah is not only groundbreaking, it is futuristic. And it's not just an organization for people to get together. It's an organization that saves lives. So I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done, for the things that the generations before you have done, and for the people that are going to be saved because of all of you. Hadassah treats over 1 million patients a year at their hospitals. And when people walk through that door, politics is left outside. There are Palestinians, Christians, Jews, Orthodox, non-Orthodox. Doesn't matter. The doctors in the hospital treat and the nurses treat everyone equally. The head of the emergency department is an Arab Israeli Jew. The doctors work so beautifully together. And Maggie and I had the fortunate ability a few years ago to get a private tour of the underground operating rooms. It's something out of the future. And we were watching this surgery on this big TV inside the room. We were dressed up like spacemen because it's a clean environment, and the doors to get in there are this thick because they're blast-proof doors. And there's a series of them you have to go through. And the doctor came out, and we thought he was going to be upset with us. And he's a nice guy, New Yorker, told us that the young man on the operating table had a motorcycle accident, and he was trying to save his leg. He said he was a vascular surgeon. He said that was the only operating room in the world that he could perform the surgery he was about to perform to save this young man's leg. That he could have chosen any hospital in the world to go work in, but yet he chose Hadassah Hospital. So the story is, thank you. And the word is, please tell other people. Maggie.
I'm sorry, I didn't think I was going to get this emotional after so many years. But I wanted to get up here today and thank each and every one of you for all you've done through the years for Hadassah. And for that reason, I still have my husband, and our almost 10 grandchildren have their grandfather, and this is priceless. You're saving lives. We are saving lives. So we got to keep working together. We got to keep the ball rolling. And thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I have to say thank you for coming up here from Florida, for doing what you do on behalf of Hadassah. And I wanted to tell you all how grateful and privileged I feel to be affiliated with people like the Greenbergs. My name is Carol Rotenberg, and I'm your National Chair of Major Gifts Fundraising. And so, you know, when we talk about things like this, I speak all over. And in the past, coming, I guess, right off the Seder table, when we would talk about things like the stem cell research that we do for melanoma, I would say Dayenu. When we would talk about the work we did on MS, I would say Dayenu. Or macular degeneration, or Parkinson's, or diabetes, all the different work that we did, I would say Dayenu. And that would basically be the main thrust of what I would talk to about people. But the past 2 years, the world has turned upside down. And what did people want to hear about? They wanted to hear about COVID. And what was Hadassah doing with COVID, since we do all this research? And yeah, we've been in the thick of that too. So we were the very first hospital to take on all these patients and turn several floors into special COVID wards. And when there wasn't enough hand sanitizer around, we created our own, thousands and thousands of bottles that we distributed. And when there weren't enough respirators for the world to use, we designed a new one using a 3D printer, and we distributed those all over. When the patients got sick in the beginning on the Princess cruise ship in Japan, you might have heard about that, it was the Japanese government that called us in to see what we could do. And we sent doctors to Australia. We sent teams of doctors to Argentina. We wrote a manual that was being used worldwide. We were really in the middle of all the trials, the design of new drugs, and partnering with companies like Pfizer to try and help the world population. But again, now the world has turned on its head. And although I was mainly talking about COVID, what's on everybody's mind now? It's Ukraine. And people keep asking me, what's Hadassah doing now with Ukraine? Well, again, we're right in the thick of it. You know, over 5.5 million people, refugees, have now gotten out of Ukraine. And 2.5 million of those people are in Poland. 90% of them are women and children. So it was no surprise that the Polish government, who had offered to pay for free health care for the first 18 months of all these refugees, did not have the infrastructure to handle them. So who would they call upon? The Ukrainian Ministry of Health and the Polish government approached Hadassah because we're one of the top 100 hospitals globally. And so they asked us, could we come in and give them a hand? So we sent over a team of doctors and medical professionals. Over 50 of our doctors volunteered right from the get-go. And we sent a few over to assess the situation. And working with the World Health Organization and the International Red Cross, we established a base in the University of Lublin, which is right on the border of Poland and Ukraine, to not only assess the situation, but see what we could do to help. So we've been sending in teams of medical professionals on a rotating basis every few weeks, along with doing virtual training of the Polish medical staff to see how we could help them. And so, as Stewart said, using all of our innovative techniques, our creative approaches, the kinds of things that Hadassah does best, because frankly, there's no one better than we are at treating trauma patients, whether it's physically or emotionally. We are the #1, the only NGO volunteer, non-Polish outfit in Poland that's providing 24/7 treatment for these refugees. And in fact, now we're treating over 300 patients a day. It's an astonishing number. And then in addition to that, we're accepting kids coming over to our youth villages in Israel. Unfortunately, some of them are now orphans. Some of them have parents who are fighting. Some of them have parents that just wanted to get them away for the war that's going on in their country. We expect to have at least 100 in Neorim. We already have about 24 at Mea Shvea. We actually have a whole athletic team that is now there, that is training for international competition. So our youth villages that have now cared for over 300,000 youths from 80 different countries around the world are now taking on this new assignment. And we're having to ramp up additional facilities, social workers, psychologists, additional, even bathrooms. And of course, what did the first group of girls who came over want to do? They wanted to go shopping. So we took them shopping. They only came with the clothes on their backs. We got sneakers, we got athletic suits, you know, all the things that teenage girls might want. How are we doing all of this? Well, we're doing it with your help. We're funding all of these efforts ourselves with the help of generous donors like you, because the capital that you provide is what's keeping us going. And so tonight, we're asking you all to think about partnering with us once again, the very important work that we're doing, not only for Jewish people or Israeli people, but for people around the world. Tonight is really a seminal moment for us. It's the 15th anniversary of our Stem Cell Walkathon. And thanks to Ellen, one of our real creators here, and to the Deberts for letting us have their home, and Brenda and everybody who's been involved. This is a very special night. So we're hoping that you'll all join with us. I wanted to just give you a few little, maybe tidbits of things you could do. Of course, any contribution that you think about or you'd like to make is greatly appreciated. But we have a few very special things that are available hot off the presses, so to speak. We are putting together what we're calling a tree of healing. We are renovating our whole original hospital because, as Stewart said, we're now treating over 1 million patients a year, which is at 125% of capacity. So buildings that we thought we would mothball, we're now having to renovate. So we're putting a tree of healing in the front entrance, in the promenade, and I'm sure you've seen it maybe in your synagogues or whatever. It will have leaves that you can inscribe. And a leaf will cost $10,000 that you can pay in a few years. Or you can even take a whole branch if you wanted to put all your kids' names on there. And if you wanted to start an open tab, like when you go to a bar, you know, it's a young crowd here, so I'm assuming you all know what I'm talking about. Well, it's the 60th anniversary of the Marc Chagall windows. And so we're doing something special in the Abel Synagogue where the Chagall windows surround the synagogue. We have just a small amount of chairs that are available, and you, again, can have a plaque on a chair with your name, $18,000. You can pay it off in a few years, and that is something very special in such an iconic space. We don't have that many left. They're going like hotcakes. And so once they're gone, they're gone. Of course, you can furnish and equip a room for $36,000, which is where we do all our translational medicine. And that's where we not only treat, but we use the research that we put together for the patients. Or you can even do a bay in the new mother and child clinic that we have. It's $50,000. And that's something, you know, last year, we actually had 14,000 new births, a record for Hadassah. A lot of babies being born. We wonder why. You know, everybody was cooped up. So a lot of babies being born, and actually the Ukrainian women, we're doing a lot in Poland also. Everything from orthopedic surgery to OBGYN, but we have 3 field hospitals there, and a lot of the work is for women who are about to give birth. So we wanted to thank you all for coming. We know that you're going to continue to support the work that we do, and we hope that we will see you all on May 15th at our walkathon. Actually, he couldn't come tonight, but it's my husband, Jim, who's going to be the Grand Marshal. So I am very excited about that. And as Brenda mentioned, walk with us in the morning and party at night. It's going to be a grand day for all of us. So thank you all for coming. And if anyone has questions of the Greenbergs, no? They said it all? Okay. All right, so if anyone wants to talk to any of us, whether it is Felicia or me or Rachel or Brenda, we're all available. And if you want to have a little more sushi or whatever, yeah, question.
I actually do have a question.
Sure.
Hadassah seems to be doing so much, and Hadassah is Jewish. Why is this not more advertised? Why do people think of Jewish people as like lesser when we are more?
Well, we actually do try and do that. That's why we're actually filming this tonight. We do try, and that's why we ask you all to go viral. You know, we have about 300,000 members, and we have affiliated men associates that help us. We try and get things in all the newspapers. We try and talk to everyone that we can. Certainly, President Zelensky has been a good role model for all Jewish people. Israel has been getting a lot of good press for COVID, so that has come out. But, you know, we can only do what we can do. But frankly, we do all try to promote Hadassah as best as we can. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi. A couple of years ago, at one of these, there was a young man who spoke about his experience with MS.
Yes.
And how he was doing much better as a result of treatment. Have there been any advances in MS?
I'm not a doctor, so I'm always a little concerned. I don't want to give out misinformation. But yes, we're doing very well with MS. And in fact, one of the patients who goes around and speaks for everyone, her name is Malia Littman. And she actually just danced at one of her children's weddings. She was completely incapacitated. An attorney who had to give up her practice, give up playing the piano, give up everything. She was completely bedridden. And through the kinds of stem cell techniques that we do, managed to gain her life back. And in fact, any donations that you decide to give now will get credited to the Stem Cell Walkathon. So I wanted to make that clear. But yes, we're making a lot of advances in almost all the areas that we're practicing in now. Yes, Sharon.
So if somebody in the United States has melanoma, like you were diagnosed, what can they do? I mean, has that in the 10 years, has the treatment gone over from Israel to here? Yeah, what would you do?
They are just at a couple of institutions beginning phase 1 trials of my treatment protocol. My treatment protocol is not a drug, so there's no money for pharmaceutical companies. And I don't know why it hasn't become more mainstream, but there are a couple of institutions which are starting to follow it. But thankfully there is a liaison for Hadassah, who, if anyone has a medical question as a foreigner, contact her, they send in the records, and we get a response very, very quickly.
Yes. In fact, we have something that we call medical tourism, and patients come from all over. I had a very good friend who had very severe Crohn's, and I was able to hook her up with a doctor at the hospital. But the kind of stem cell treatments that we do, we inject the cells differently than most other hospitals. But we have partnerships here with the Mayo Clinic, with the Cleveland Clinic, with Sloan Kettering. When the Boston Marathon occurred and those victims of the terrible incident there, we were the ones who trained those doctors at Mass General and whatever. Again, because unfortunately, we have had to deal with incidents like that. And many of the doctors there credited saving the lives, saving the limbs, but from the training that our doctors provided. Okay? All right. Thanks all. And